All right, and welcome back. Decision 2022 continues. And of course, today we want to focus on something that I think it's important for us to have such a conversation, and that is as far as post-election grief. Yes, section of a group of people were actually celebrating yesterday, but then there are others who, again, are yet to come to terms with the fact that either they lost a particular seat or their candidate lost. And of course, because we all know that at the end of the day, we usually have some sort of like a stake when it comes to elections, because politics is a highly emotional business and many people feel a personal stake in the outcomes of elections. So dealing with a loss at the polls can be a serious event for voters and candidates alike. And because of the high emotional factor in politics, it is common for voters and candidates as well to have strong reactions to election results. And the question is, so then how do we move forward post election loss? Well, that is what we want to focus on today. And of course, to help us with the same, Kagondu is back. Kagondu Jr., who's a counseling psychologist. So good to see you this morning, Kagondu. How are you feeling?
Doing good, better than yesterday.
I know it has been like an intense, right? Yes. It has been an intense week or close to 2 weeks,
oh, yes.
You know, for all the Kenyans. And even yesterday, as we were waiting for the results, you know, it was long hours of waiting and waiting and waiting. And of course, that in one way or the other can take a toll, you know, on all of us. So then when it comes to the elections, I think my first question would be, why are we so invested? And not just invested financially, I would say, for the candidates, but there's also that aspect of emotional investment, you know, for the candidates and also the supporters. Like, why is it such a strong, we feel so strongly about elections?
You know, this is a season that actually affects us in so many ways. And like you say, many people actually have a keen interest as far as elections are concerned. And speaking of that, remember, there's an element of status quo when it comes to it. And you could hear during the electioneering period, and especially when they were doing their campaigns, people saying that this is our man, this is our, you know, Mtoto comes from our own village, yes, and all that, and then they really want to identify with them. And remember, when we look at those who clinch the top seats, you know, it comes with some element of goodies, okay? And the prestige that comes with it, when you talk about, you know, in my village, we have the president who comes from there.
From our village,
and the notion is some goodies will come by in terms of developments, infrastructure-wise, and also in terms of many resources being directed there. And that's why you find that there's a lot of push and pull as far as getting to where we are is concerned. And looking at it, we can see it has taken such a long time, and especially for us to get to where we were yesterday. Some of them began way, you know, like 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and you can see how much it has taken a toll over them. And looking at it, when you are waiting for the announcement, you know, to get the president-elect, we were filled with a lot of anxiety.
Oh,
and
yes. Oh, yes.
Many people complain saying that their tummies are going bad, and it's like they're getting sick, you know, butterflies, waters in their stomach, and that tells you that, you know, some of them were actually responding to it, say in a negative way. And while some were actually happy, and you can see the celebrations that we had, you know, from yesterday in the evening, you know, to the night. And I'm sure as people wake up today, they also have the same. Oh, yeah. Yes. And that's why we need to be keen and careful with how we go about it, because there is also our brothers and sisters on the receiving end. And the question is, how do we get to deal with it in a healthy way?
Absolutely, because again, we can understand, and especially for those ones who are celebrating, we can understand the emotions, you know, you're happy and all those things, and sometimes you might end up saying things to maybe you know, the other person who is not celebrating that might trigger them in one way or the other. So I think the biggest question is then how do we exercise empathy, and especially during this period, not only for your neighbor, you know, or your friend who quote unquote lost during the election, but also to the candidates themselves, because I can imagine at this time there's a lot of blame game. You did not do this, that is why we did not win, or you did not play your part, a lot of back and forth. But then again, there's also the question of, there's some people who can take the loss well, and there's some that again, the stress can go all the way. So then in terms of how we react differently, what exactly, or what are some of these factors that lead to people reacting differently to, you know, the sad news, and that is we have lost.
You know, when you think about the term loss and also the grieving aspect of it, how we respond to such cases, remember our biological makeup is totally different. And in a case scenario where one has actually lost their loved ones, because loss can actually cut across, you know. Today we are talking about the elections, but think of someone who has lost a loved one, somebody who has lost some property, investments, and so on and so like. And this is why we say, depending on a number of factors, you know, we do respond to these events totally differently. There are those who are emotionally strong and are actually okay. Their coping mechanism is up there, you know, and no matter what they go through, they still sail through the storm and they're able to come out of it very strongly, and they're actually able to compose themselves. Others, you find that they have gone through a number of losses, you know, multiple losses. And you can think of that political leader or that guy who was eyeing for that political seat. And 2017, 2013, 2002, they have actually lost, you know, time and again. And you get to think, where are they, all right? And with this, you may find that there's an element of even those traumatic experiences. Why? Because for them, it leaves them feeling so vulnerable, helpless in this case, and to some point, some actually lose hope. And we are seeing on our social medias, some actually in the hospital, and they're actually calling for help from those hospital beds, you know, telling their followers, you know, I did ABCD, I brought you guys some tanks, I bought your wives some clothes, you know, I paid for their hospital bills and all that. And there's a lot of pain when it comes to it, all right? And you find that with that, there's a lot of verbal terrain, you know, in terms of how we actually speak, how we actually express ourselves, because the pain at that particular moment is so unbearable. There's also the support system. And this is where we say who has your back, right? And as much as, yes, we climbing that ladder of success, you know, getting to the top seats and all that, who have you brought along with you? And that's why we say it's good that you get to build a very strong support system. So that at that time of need, at that hour of need, you know, you have, I could hear most of the politicians talk about my foot soldiers, you know, and these are the ones that they do count on to actually support on them.
But then again, what does that look like? And especially for the candidates, because I know of a story, and I think this was in 2017, where there was this governor who, after he lost, at some point he took his phone, because he thought there's a problem with his phone, so he took it to the guy to take a look at it, and the guy is like, but there's nothing wrong with your phone, because it was not ringing, because there was no one who was calling him. So he thought there was a problem with his phone because calls are not coming in. What is up? Only for this person to realize the persons who he thought would be there for him even after he lost actually disappeared. Nobody is talking to you anymore because tutapata nini, hakuna pesa, you know, there are no goodies like you were talking about. So then when it comes to support, what exactly does it look like? What exactly should it look like? So that you know that at the end of the day you have people who genuinely support you and they do not have like any form of interest in terms of when you gain, we also gain. You
know, it's good that at the onset, you know, when you're preparing for these campaigns and all that, and I can hear actually people talk about, you know, 2027, I'll be vying for this seat. I have seen that it is possible and all that. I feel this is the space that you actually should be looking for the support system. And like you're saying, there are those who have their own personal interest, and for them, when they see you in that particular position, they see themselves as a certain, maybe in charge of the finances, transport and all that, and they know there are some good kickbacks out of it, right? And this is where we need to be aware of those around us. When you're picking a good support system, it's good that you get to know, you know, it starts from a space of self-awareness and also awareness around the people around you. Get to know what you need, all right? So I'm vying for this particular position in 5 years' time. Who do I need? Do I need people who can actually mobilize people? You understand? Why? Because in most cases, I can't do it on my own. You can think of a governor who has to traverse a number of constituencies, and on their own, they can actually do that. And no wonder you are seeing a majority of these politicians, they actually had, you know, these groups, all right? If one is in the coastal region, the other one is in the western, or even the northern part of Kenya. Why? Because on their own they can't actually do that. When you also get to think about the support system, earlier on you were talking about how some of these leaders have been there in the game for such a long time, but you can see them wearing out. Why? Because time has actually taken over them, and they look tired, they look worn out, and that's why also the physical health is equally important. And we have seen, you know, the who is who. They have their own personal nutritionist. They have someone who actually takes care of their health. Why? Because it is equally important. And there's a time I was actually asking myself, do I have the energy to traverse this country the way that they were doing in a day? You actually hear someone
might have like 5, 6 meetings in a day,
and you're like, how are they able to do this? That means you yourself physically, you also need to be up there and actually have someone who can actually support you along that end. The other thing, it would be your own emotional well-being. Why? Because remember, there's a lot of you know, exchanging words. You go through your social media profile or accounts, and you know, they are saying all manner of things, calling you names. All right, and the thing is, how do you get to handle this? And the question is, our politicians, do they have personal therapists?
You see, the thing is, I think us as a people, again, who are coming in from the outside, there's a way that we paint politicians or people, for example, in the limelight. And of course, now that today we're focusing on elections, there's a way we see leaders and think we dehumanize them. Like they're not human beings. They're not from this, they're not from this planet. They're just, you know. They're
superheroes.
Exactly. So we expect our expectations in terms of how they react to things, how they respond, how they see things. It's totally different
and
from how we see
sad. Why? Because one question that I normally ask when I'm training these people on leadership, it's an element of self-care. Why? Because who is the hero to this hero? Who do they go to? All right. Why? Because in most cases, every other morning there's somebody at the door, at the gate, knocking. You know, and you get to ask, okay, for what reason? And you know, my child has been chased away from school. We have someone in the hospital, you know, all manner of things, and the needs are so many, and at times you wonder, are they in a position to actually meet all these needs? And that's why it's very important for them to actually have someone they can run up to. And I've seen a majority of them, you know, their family being a very strong support system for them. I hear them call them my prayer warrior, you know, and at times this is why we actually need to be keen on the person that we choose as our spouse. Why? Because they actually need to have your back, whether you are a male politician or even a female politician. And we are actually seeing female politicians coming out and saying, if it weren't for my man, I will not be here. You know, they have been so supportive. They have been there, you know, fighting for me and all that. Why? Because at the end of the day, when all is done and said, you know, you still go back to the family. And that tells you that as a politician, as a leader out there, be it a CEO, be it, you know, some chairman in a certain organization or that, it's good that you also get to invest in your family as a good support system. Why? Because they play a very big role. You know, when they retire, we have our president who is outgoing, you know, our President Uhuru Kenyatta. He's going back to his family. And that tells you any leader out there, you know, it's very important for them to actually invest in their family, because they're still going to go back to them.
You will go back. And I think someone was saying, if you did not build that strong foundation, especially when it comes to your family being your biggest supporter, then when you go back, you might find that they're not there, you know, and you are all alone. Like this, again, this governor who no one was calling them. So that who do you go back to in terms of that support? So identify people who will genuinely support you, not because you have some level of power or you know, but because they just want to support you. So then when it comes to dealing with this, because like you said, people deal with it differently, and of course in this case the politicians might have it even rough, you know, as compared to the supporters, because again at the end of you've lost so much, because there's a lot of time, emotion, financial aspect of the same. You invested so much and then it's not there anymore. For some, you'd find that, and especially maybe like the second-time governors, you have no other way of coming back. So then there's that question of, so what do I do after this? Where do I go? How do I regroup? You know, because they come a quote-unquote job imeisha, you know, so that how do you move on? So then in terms of handling all this, because there are healthy and unhealthy ways. So when it comes to unhealthy ways of how, again, loss manifests in people, what are some of those things that we should be on the lookout and see, you know what, this person is not well, we need to find help for them?
You know, the thing is, we never get to think about that time, you know, that time when it comes, that I'll cease to be the governor, the MP, the women rep in a certain place. And the thing is, for any transition, for anything to come to an end, that means there's a new beginning. And what I always say is that there's a very big gap between the transition itself. We never get to think about it. Why? Because at times it's very chaotic, and we never, you know, get in touch with it. There's a lot of noise. Yes, you know, and I was looking at my area MP. I actually live close to the office, and just before we did our elections, I could see a lot of movement, you know, in the office, you know, vehicles coming in and out, telling you that there's a whole lot of transition, okay? And at times it becomes chaotic, especially if you have not planned for it effectively, all right? And you see, the reason why so many people actually cling to power, it's because they don't want to lose that relevance.
That's
you
true.
know,
That's
they
true.
don't want to lose that status, right? But we are never in terms with it. We never get to plan for it in advance.
What if it
right?
doesn't
stay through? And this is where we need to ask ourselves, what do we need to do? We have talked about, we have the stages of loss, you know, thinking about where we have shock and denial. When you get the news, you know, Muheshimiwa, in this polling station, we don't think that you're going to get it. Why? Because the numbers are so low, all right? The turnout is equally low. So we don't see any future in it. And, you know, for most of them, they'll be like, no, this cannot be happening. And for them, they receive the news with a lot of shock and at times denial. They don't want to get into terms with that. And no wonder you get to hear most of them talking about recounts. You know, I'll be going to the Supreme Court and all that. To challenge the outcome of the elections. Talk about the anger. You know, and no wonder you find, like yesterday in the Bomas of Kenya, we had a group of them.
Very ugly scenes, you know, at the Bomas.
Expressing themselves with a lot of anger. They want to throw jabs, they want to cause chaos, and that tells you that they are not in terms with what is happening. And that tells you, you know, what you had said, there's a lot of blame game. You did this, you did that, you know, it's because you never did your work, you know, appropriately and all that. And that's where you find that some also get into the other stage of bargaining, trying to see what can I do. If I go back to the, if I go to the court of law, if I ask for a recount, maybe I'll be able to, you know, have my seat back. And that's why you find that most of them actually fall into depression. Right? And the how to go about it, how to deal with the shame that comes with it. Some actually, there's a lot of guilt that comes with it. Remember, most of them will still be going back to their village where they did nothing.
Absolutely.
You know, and you know, for the 5 years before they got into that position, they were promising all manner of things. You have tarmac roads, you have some electricity, piped water, talk about the schools and all that, bursary, everything, right? But they did nothing, absolutely nothing for their people. They have to go back to their people. So how to face that actually takes a toll over them and becomes something that you can actually, they don't have a way of going about it. And no wonder we say a majority of them actually look forward to that time where they get to the acceptance, but very little of them, very few of them actually are accorded that, you know, the privilege to get to the acceptance. But there is also another stage that we barely think of, finding meaning, you know, after loss. After the loss. After the acceptance, it's good that we also get to find meaning in life. And this is where we get to ask ourselves, how do we move on? What do we need to do?
And I mean, I can imagine it can be very difficult for you to, again, like you're saying, number one, sometimes we don't plan for that loss, you know, because again, there's that aspect of we hope for the best. We hope that the you know, the outcome would be in our favor. But then again, that doesn't happen. So dealing with the loss in itself first, it takes time. And again, like we said earlier on, people deal with it differently. It manifests differently, and people get to that point of acceptance at their own pace. But then finding meaning. You see, at this point, it might not make sense, you know, for someone to say, you know what, maybe this loss meant there's maybe a bigger purpose or there's a bigger picture. Like it might not make sense at that time, right? So then, do you give yourself time? Do you first of all make yourself or be intentional about finding purpose, you know, or finding meaning after the loss? Do you make it intentional, or it just comes? We deal with it later on. Yes.
You know, you have to be very intentional.
Okay.
Why? Because nothing happens just by chance, you know. And this is where we're saying that even after the loss itself, it's good that you also get to experience the stages, the emotions themselves. Why?
Allow yourself
to do that.
Because you see, sometimes we're strong, strong.
And you want to wear a very brave face.
Or there's that aspect of how the electorate, you know, your supporters, they hold it to a certain standard that they do not expect to see any form of emotion because we were strong. So then you don't have time, you don't have the luxury, you don't have the space to, you know, really show people how you're feeling at that time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I actually feel this is where they go wrong. Why? Because we are humans. Beyond the titles that we have, beyond, you know, the title of a president, beyond the title of a governor, name it, to the MCA. We are humans, you know. And this is where we need to accept that those emotions will be part of us. And I always say that it's okay for you to actually feel that way. And though they did it in a you know, it wasn't the appropriate way in terms of, you know, causing chaos and all that. Actually showing the world that they are angry about it, it was okay, though they did it in the wrong way, right? And this is where we need to appreciate that our leaders are actually humans. It's good that their families also get to appreciate that those who are from their families and they happen to have those positions are actually human beings, right? And this is where we need to allow them, you know, to mourn, because they're actually mourning, you know, the loss of that particular seat. And I've seen most of them, you know, taking their time. Some have flown to the coastal region, maybe just
get away,
getting away
from all
of that.
This.
And you see, the beauty about it, you can never see the picture from the frame. You have to get out, you know, for you to actually comprehend what is happening around you. And that's why, as much as yes, they want to keep off, because actually some will actually fight to the end. Some will take a backseat, you know, and watch things as they happen, as a way of trying to process the emotions that come with it. And that's why we're saying that they also need the support, and especially from those around them. Because if you don't deal with the emotions, they'll actually find their way, you know, to affect you in future. Because what happens is some of these traumatizing events, some of these experiences that we go through, they get hidden in our somatic system. Right? And this is where you find that the five senses are actually triggered, right? And no wonder you find that if you go through a similar experience, say in future, you find yourself re-experiencing what you went through in the past, right? And no wonder you find someone, say in a relationship, you find that you want to get intimate with them, but for them, when you touch them, they get goosebumps. Why? Because maybe they went through some set of sexual abuse, and you never get to talk about it. You never dealt with it. So that tells it's equally important for them. Why? Because it's not the end of the of it all. Yeah, it's not the end of the world. In future, maybe they also get another chance. But if they don't deal with themselves, with the emotions that come to be, with the emotions that are actually manifesting in them, it will actually affect how they transition and the kind of a person that they will be in future. Yes.
All right. So then the question is, so then how do you allow this person, like in terms of like this space you're giving them to just show their emotion, you know, and not judging them in one way or the other, because again, like we said, the electorate, there's that expectation, as we supported you, why did you, you know? So then how do you accord that? What does that safe space look like that they can go through all the emotion process? Because I think the processing part is usually, there's usually a disconnect, so allow them to process, allow them to feel what they feel, and then come out stronger. and find meaning from the loss, because like we said, sometimes it's important to just find meaning.
It is.
Yeah.
And you know, in most cases, we, the people who are close to them, are actually the cause of all this in terms of the challenges that they face. Why? Because we tend to even keep off completely. And you like, ulikuwa mheshimiwa, you never did something for us, so why should I create anything for you? Okay. Remember, there's a lot of bitterness that comes with it, all right? From the electorates that they were representing, the people from their village and all that, it's good that we get to know that this is still our person, all right? And no matter
the love
what,
you showed them when they were in power,
exactly,
you should show them the same amount of love even after.
We are not saying that you tell them, you know, kuna Mungu binguni, you know, that we...
Oh yeah, some things that we usually say that...
It's good that you get to support them spiritually, but by you being there, it's okay. It's allowed, without even saying much.
But what then do you say? Because I can understand sometimes you want to say something just to show them that you're there for them. But then again, sometimes the things that you say are not good in that moment. In that
context, yes. And you see, maybe my definition of what you're going through, it's my individual, it's personal. And there's a lot of assumptions that comes with it. By looking at you, remember when you talk about some of these, and especially mental health, you can never pick it from the face value. And it doesn't like have a writing on your forehead telling you, you know, I'm going through trauma, I'm going through PTSD and all that. And this is where we need to actually have hold a healthy conversation with them, and actually asking them, how can I support you, is equally important. Why? Because we need to get to their level to understand what they are going through.
Exactly
going through. So we don't have to tell them, you know, when you go through the loss, go back to the church, go to your people, apologize and all that. It's good that you get to ask them, you know, what can I do for you? How are you feeling at this particular moment? Do you have some needs? All right. And this is where, you know, those who are close to you, remember what we had said earlier on, by you getting to choose a good support system. People who actually are there for who you are, for what you mean, you know, for the leadership, and they're true to their word. They'll actually understand what you need, all right? And they'll be able to approach you in a healthy way. And this is where we say, in case, I always ask people, in case you have a child who has fallen down, what do? You know, you pick them up, you know, you dust them off, and you actually comfort them. And this is actually what we should do with them, sharing compassion with them. Why? Because it's actually a loss just like any other. Because we only think that this is just elections. It's not a loss like of that of a loved one, but every loss is equally...
and it's equally devastating to everyone. And sometimes it's good to just shut up. Don't say anything, right? Yes, be there, but just don't say anything. Allow them to process, right?
Yes, very important, because in most cases, like we're saying, you might actually end up doing more harm than good. By what you're saying, you know, or you're giving suggestions and all that. Remember, we also need to be very careful. Why? Because what we say may actually work against them.
Absolutely.
All right? And if it doesn't go through for them, you'll be the one to blame. And they'll be like, you know, it's because of Winnie that this didn't happen. She told me to, you know, approach this by all these. And this is where we get to ask them, what do you think should actually work for you? And if we are true to the call, then we'll be able to come up with some healthy ways to go about it, and also be creative in our own ways.
In our own way. And speaking of creative, then what are some of the ways, like healthy coping ways, that we can employ, and especially during this period where, again, like we said, there's some who are celebrating, but of course some who are again mourning the loss. So and most of the times we usually see chaos erupt in different places, but this time we're happy that we did not see a lot of that, which is a good thing.
It is.
So then how do we channel this energy, the ones that would have you know, been used to create chaos and violence and all those things? How do we channel that in a healthy way to, yes, process the loss, but at the same time come out stronger, without creating any form of tension, chaos, violence, you know, across the country?
Yeah, and I think this is where we actually congratulate the Kenyans.
Yes.
For really composing themselves, holding themselves back, and without seeing a lot of chaos out there. But it doesn't mean that they're not affected. It doesn't mean that they don't feel, you know, the emotions that they're not manifesting. In fact, in most households, you find that most of them have actually broken their screens. They have actually thrown some jabs, or even uttered some hurtful words, you know,
yeah.
to their loved ones. And, you know, we always say that there's no vacuum in this world, all right? So the exit of one thing is actually replaced with another, right? And this is where we find that people actually look for means and hows to go about a certain loss, all right? And this is where we're saying the coping mechanisms, talk about the healthy and the unhealthy. Yesterday, some out of our celebrations, they'll do one for the road, and there'll be a lot of cheers and all that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and that's them. Maybe that's how they cope, and that's how they feel it works for them. But the challenge is, what is the aftermath? What is the effects of all this? And this is where we say we need to find creative ways and healthy ways to go about it. Why? Because we need to actually transit this energy into some healthy contributing aspects in our lives. Why? Because we say that emotions are actually energies, and you can never destroy them. You understand? So you have to find a way to go about it. And for those who actually love, you know, being aggressive, fighting, you know, that's the way that they actually approach some of these experiences. Doing some work, that would be very important for them. You hear people talk about, you know, for me, mimi naenda kwa shamba. This is when ninatoa stress yangu. And they actually do it, all right? And when they're plowing and doing that, that is actually healthy for them. There are actually some who actually take a flight and they take a back seat. And just being there, allowing yourself to go through the emotions is equally important. And don't be worried when you find someone is taking their time to process, right?
Allow them.
Because, because our biological makeup is totally different. The way you approach issues, it will be totally different from mine. And some are not okay with that sense of, you know, calmness, you know. It's not in their norm, it's not in their vocabulary. And that's why you find that if my partner, if my loved one, if my family member is taking their time off, I actually get uncomfortable and I start wondering, what's wrong with me? Have I wronged them? You understand? There are those who actually keep on replaying the whole scenario, okay?
And trying to see what could I have done differently. What could have I done? And remember, with this electioneering period, it becomes very addictive for most people. Why? Because people are chanting your names, they are calling your name, you're all over the media, social media, you're the talk of the village, you know, so-and-so is vying for this particular seat. When you go to the places of worship, they actually give you the first row seat, you know? And given an opportunity to actually talk and address the congregants. But when this is said and done, when this is over, you never get to experience that. And that's why you find that most of the people actually have this playing in their mind. And at the night, at the wee hours of the night, you find that some of them have nightmares, you know, some actually get triggered, and you may find them responding in a certain way, which is not the usual way. And the question is, what should we do when this is said and done? And like we're saying, finding creative ways. Remember, there are those who actually honor, you know, the people that have actually lost, or even if you have lost a loved one. And in this case, this is something that we can actually propose to our leaders. In case you feel that this loss has actually affected you, it's good that you also honor yourself through the same, all right? And you have heard people talk about foundations, where you can hear maybe Nelson Madiba Mandela School of Leadership, maybe, or even if it is in this Kenyan case where we have our former premier, you know, he has done so much for this country, and we can actually come up even with a school and honor him. Maybe say University of Nairobi School of Leadership, you know, and in a way that makes him to feel relevant. Remember what we said, finding meaning after the loss, all right? And this can actually keep them going. Remember, in the phases of life, there's those needs that we have to achieve, all the way from the physiological, the basic needs, all the way to self-actualization. And the way that we actualize, it will be totally different for different people. There are some who are actually going to cling into, get the title itself, become presidents and all that. Some may not see the light of the day. You know, the dreams actually may not see the light
moment of the day. And the question is, how do we impact the lives of those people around us? How do we leave a legacy? All right. And I feel getting to honor yourself, that will be very important for you by a way of finding meaning in it.
Absolutely. Yes. It's possible to find meaning. You just have to give yourself time and space to actually process all those things and come out stronger. All right. And what about the electorate then? Because again, on social media, I saw a lot of people saying, "Sasa mimi nitaweka wapi uso?" You know, it's because of how strongly they supported maybe a particular party, a particular candidate, and they have lost. So they're like, "Nitangalia wapi, nitambia nini watu," you know?
Yes.
In terms of then, just first of all, getting to that point of acceptance that this has happened and there's life after this. Again, how do you cope with, you know, with the same, my candidate lost, I feel all types of emotions, but at the end of the day, remember, your candidate has their life to lead, and you also have your life to lead. So that in terms of just understanding that, first of all, and moving forward.
And you said there will be a lot of chaos when it comes to it, and especially at the family level. I remember before we had the elections, we did a mini election in our family. And let me tell you that we had supporters from all quarters, including those who scored solo. All right, we had people supporting them. And the question was, how do we get to move forward after the elections? Why? Because remember, we are still family. Remember, we are still friends. Okay, and I've actually had friends who are supporting the other Mulengo other than mine. Okay, and remember, the memes circulating on our social media.
Gosh, yes.
I'll get a number of them on my phone, and you wonder, where are we going? And how are we going to deal with it? And this is where we need to actually appreciate each other's opinions, all right? Why? Because, oh yes, because we don't have to be of the same opinion, right?
All the time.
Our desire is to have a united nation. Our desire is to have a peaceful nation where everybody can actually work and contribute to the growth and development of this particular nation, okay? And I need you the same way that you need me. And this is where we need to appreciate that every other region in this particular country, we need one another, because if we can look at it from the agricultural part of it, you know, aspect, we have some regions that do very well when it comes to livestock keeping. Others, it would be plantations, tea plantations, talk about the coffee. Others, it would be the maize and all that. Some, it would be the fish. And we need all these for a balanced diet. And that tells you that we need one another. And as much as, yes, we supported different political parties, different leaders, you know, as far as the four are concerned, and of course, even the others who are not allowed to go through. It's good that we also get to appreciate that. And remember, the same process happens even with the followers, the people who are all over the social media. And I could see that it was quite
it really was. It really was. And sometimes you wonder. And especially these platforms, sometimes you just question, should they then be regulated in terms of what are you posting and what are you not posting? Because again, that could create a lot of you know, chaos and tension as well. Because I might be here and be like, you know what, fine, my candidate lost, we live, you know, to see another day. But then again, when I go to social media, it triggers a lot of emotions.
A lot of
from,
it. Oh yes, and you see, when you talk about, say, we can pick an example of Facebook, it's actually faceless, you know, and I can have someone else portrait on my the profile picture. So that tells you can actually pick the person that you're interacting with. And that's why it's very important for us to be careful, and especially with how we respond to this event, right? But I'm happy equally with how sober we have been for the past few days, and especially with how we interact with one another. I could see the blue hand and the yellow hand actually, you know, coming together.
Which was and such a beautiful thing to see.
People talking about, if you win, I'll support you.
If my fifth,
if my fifth is not your fifth, I will support you. And that tells you that people are actually sober and they mean well. But there is equally that group that, you know, they are not up to terms with what is happening. And it's okay for them to feel that way. But then it's good that they also get to appreciate that not all times that we agree. And that's why we always say that it's always good that we also get to agree not to agree, to disagree.
It's okay to disagree.
It's actually okay. And it doesn't mean that because you're of a different opinion that we are not sailing towards the same route, all right? Maybe the destination, it could be, we have the same destination of a peaceful, united nation, but maybe the route is totally different, okay? And that's why we're supporting the candidate that we feel is equally to the task. And that's why we should actually share compassion with those that we interact with. If I saw someone posting something that is not along my, my values and all that, it's not aligned to my values and all that, it's not a time to actually bash them, make fun of them. And I remember, like in my case, my sister was saying, Sasa tumeshindwa. And now, are you going to share those memes, Right,
right. Or even gloating in their faces below.
Exactly,
No, that's not the time.
Yes, but we need to actually accommodate one another. And I'm happy even what was happening, and especially with the regulation, because remember, it got into a time where the bloggers, they were given a warning, this is the far that you can go. And that's what is needed for a peaceful nation.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. And sometimes people say it's okay to step away. And I think you've mentioned this as well, in terms of, yes, we've seen some of these leaders, again, just taking a step away and, process all those things. Some people say don't watch news.
Yes.
Step away from social media. But then how different is that from avoidance? Because you see, the more you avoid, the more, of course, that will bring issues. So yes, limiting what you're consuming, but at the same time not getting to that point of where you're completely avoiding everything, because that will not help in the processing.
Yes, and it's very important for us to be present with ourselves. And when you talk about the avoidance and all that, we actually respond to these events totally differently. And I remember it got to a time that I also had those moments, and I was telling my friend yesterday that it got to a point that I had to do away with the news. Completely. Okay. Why? Because the numbers are actually getting me into my nerves. Remember what we have said, some of these experiences actually gets into your somatic system, all right? And if you're not careful, then this can actually affect you in a negative way. And I remember at some point, I'll only peep once in a while, just to pick where we are, how things are, because you also need to be informed, you don't have to completely ignore what is happening around you. And that's why it's very important for us to be careful, and especially how much we expose ourselves. Remember what we said, that these experiences can actually be traumatic per se, right? And what happens is there's an element of trigger that comes with it. And if the television is my trigger, if the numbers are my triggers, if the social media is my trigger, then it's very important for me to take off, to keep off from it, all right? And that's why you need to be aware of how your system actually responds, all right? And I've seen some friends actually logging off completely. Doing away with those platforms and all that, why? Because they are taking care of themselves, all right? And as much as, yes, we are concerned with that particular person who might actually avoid going through this particular experience totally, it's good that you also get to know that it's good that you detach yourself, all right? And detaching yourself tells you that it's you're able to actually monitor how you're feeling, how you're responding, and also watch from a distance. Because so many of those outside there actually entangled, with the politics. You have seen, especially with the Premier League, people getting on each other's neck, and they're so mad when their team loses. And that's why you actually have to detach in a healthy way. And detachment, it doesn't mean that you're avoiding, all right? It's only that it means that you're aware of what is happening around you, and you're actually not entangled, with what is happening. Why? Because when you do that, like we said, when you're away, when you're outside the frame, you can actually be able to see the picture, and you can actually be able to, pick what is happening around you.
Absolutely. Yes. And then again, when it comes to still and especially for those persons who lost their lives, lost their family members, again, lost their friends, all those things, and especially during the post-election violence. Of course, this period can be very triggering, for them. There's that question of then finding healing, but at the same time avoiding the triggers, but sometimes you cannot avoid, the triggers. So again, finding healing in all this period. Yes, you might say it happened a long time ago, but still there's some people till date, are still affected by the same. Either, of course, their lives changed, or they lost their loved ones. So this period, of course, can be very triggering for them. So in terms of finding healing and finding peace, even during this chaotic, we could say, moment. What would you say to that?
You know, it's very important, and especially for such who are equally affected. And I know quite a number of them. They still go back to 2007, 2008 post-election violence.
Absolutely.
And you can't ignore the mere fact that they were really affected by the outcomes, you know, the chaos that was there. And I could hear quite a number of them talk about, you know, I'm not going to participate in these elections. Why? Because those who are vying for these positions were there then. And you find there's a lot of emotional turmoil. They're equally affected in such a big way. And I can only share empathy with them, you know, and especially with what they went through. And in fact, I have friends who actually lost loved ones. Some actually lost some investments, big investments, you know, during that time. And when they get to hear about elections, they get shivers, you know. And this is where we need to ask ourselves and really be honest with ourselves. How do we get to deal and move on? Why? Because as much as all this has happened, as much as the announcement of the president-elect was done yesterday, we still woke up. For those who are blessed with life today, you know, we still experience mourning this morning, all right? And this is where we need to actually find ways to go beyond that. And it doesn't mean for you getting to that level of acceptance that you have actually forgotten what has happened. If it is your loved, and the reason why most of the people out there are actually still clinging and really affected by the loss, and especially of their loved ones, is because they think that if I accept, then I have actually let them go completely. And it's like I'm forgetting them. It's like they cease to have meaning in my life. But this is for your own good. Why? Because life has to continue. And this is where they need a lot of support. Remember, talking is very important, and especially for traumatizing events. Studies have shown that for those who actually express themselves, say through writing, they get less of the physical illnesses after any traumatic experience. And no wonder we tell people to actually journal how they feel. It's good that they also get to if it is for the children, they can also do the drawing, you know, getting to express themselves through art, and that is equally important for them. If it is a grown-up and they can have access to a counselor, you know, and they talk through about the issues that affect them, it's very important for them. And I'm happy with the families that come to us, and especially when they lose their loved ones, for the debriefing services. And this actually helps them to block or hinder themselves from advancing to the PTSD, the post-traumatic stress disorder. Why? Because in a way, this actually hinders them from advancing in life, being productive. And no wonder you find that some people, after they go through such experiences, they are no longer productive at the workplace. They are no longer productive at home. And you wonder what is happening with them. It's because this has actually taken a toll over them, and they're in that bondage. And no wonder it's good for them to deal with the issues. So if you're out there and this electioneering period was actually a trigger, that tells you that you're not healed and you actually need to get help. Let them come to us, and we are going to support them.
Absolutely. And of course, right now in the country, we're taking mental health a bit more seriously. The government, again, has invested heavily as far as mental health is concerned. So then as we bring this to a close, meaning and moving forward, what would you say, especially when it comes to therapy?
Yes, the most important thing for us is to try as much as we can to get back to where we were before all this happened. And at times we ask ourselves, are we going to get back 100%? And the truth of the matter is that we might not get the 100%. But if we get 70, if not 60, and we were at 40 before, then I feel that is a good place to start off. Why? Because every other day we need to work on ourselves. And we say that life is work in progress, all right? And when you talk about your own mental well-being, remember there's no physical health without mental wellness, all right? And if up there you're not okay, then even making critical decisions, it will be very tough for you. Remember, this actually affects us in so many ways. And it is actually going to limit you in so many ways. And no wonder you find that somebody who was very productive, very vibrant at the workplace, a very good leader, and we have seen some who have actually vanished in their tenure, all right, after the elections. Someone who was very active at the family level, say providing for their family, you know, making a good family. This is to happen, and at times we wonder where this is coming from. Some actually get into drinking, and you wonder where they are abusing these substances. They stop even taking care of themselves, and that tells you it's equally important for us to actually find means and how to go beyond this. And no wonder debriefing is very important. It's important. I don't know if it is possible, but if we can get all those who never got those positions,
to just go for a debrief,
to go for support. Some may go the religious way. They might go to their imam, they might go to their vicar or reverend. Some may actually go to their friends and talk through about it. But if possible, get a professional therapist, counselor, who can actually work with you to support you as you deal with the emotions and all that. And if you're able to do that, then sooner or later, you'll be able to be back on your feet.
Absolutely.
Okay? Because we always say that it's okay for you to feel that way. It's okay for you not to be okay. It's okay for you to experience all those emotions. It actually means that you're human.
Absolutely. Yes. Kagondi Junior, counseling psychologist and transformational coach, we say thank you for coming by this morning. Just help us understand how do we move forward, because again, you know, bouncing back sometimes can be difficult, but it is possible. It is possible. You know, to bounce back. Thank you so much, Kagondi. Of course, thank you so much for staying with us until the end of the conversation. Again, takeaway message is, number one, learn to practice empathy, because again, do not, you know, be so self-centered to just think about yourself, but also remember there's someone who is close to you that again might be experiencing loss. So practice empathy. Let's be kind to one another and support. Offer as much support as you can. So we have to end it here. My name is Winnie Lubembe. God bless. Have yourselves a good one, and I'll see you tomorrow morning, same time, same place. Goodbye for now.